Hello there, welcome to Crusader Kings 2. I'll be running a little beginner's guide on how to thrive and survive. I've just picked a random guy here. You actually do have a liege. So first and foremost, we'll go through the liege-subject relationship. Basically, when you start, you can be a free count, duke, king, emperor, whatever. If you're on top, that's good. That means that everyone is below you. And basically, the only thing that's really a threat in those situations are how they feel about you. For instance, people that do dislike you in opinion, you can actually see why they dislike you here, will mostly like join factions against you, etc. But we are a duke, so we're kind of in an interesting position here, because for starters we have subjects of our own, but we are also a subject to a king. So we're kind of in a, well, not bad position per se, but we aren't in the very best position ever. So as you can see, this is actually my opinion of my liege, and the opinion is based on a few, well, a few different modifiers. The start is state diplomacy. State diplomacy is basically my liege diplomacy plus diplomacy of his counselor. So I believe you can actually add wives to this as well. I'm a little bit unsure, but basically state diplomacy decides how well people like you, and having a high diplomacy rating is really crucial when you're running a big empire, because that basically means that people will like you more, you'll have less to worry about, and thus everything will run a lot smoother. Now when it comes to military rating, state marshal, it's basically, as you can see, important for generals, and it helps with tasks you've given to the marshal, for instance, train troops. It's not really too important unless you're planning to use your ruler as a leader on the battlefield, but you can always get other people to do that, and it's kind of beneficial to keep your ruler living for a long time, because you'll get a long reign benefit. Whenever you start a reign, there's usually a minus, but if you have a king or chief or whatever that rules for a extended period of time, then he'll get positive opinion for basically having a long reign. So having someone rule from 20 to 100 rather than having 8 kings ruling for 10 years each is definitely more preferable. Now the third trait here, stewardship, it's well, it helps control your tax income, as you can see, but it's basically what decides how big your own dimness can be. And basically a high stewardship bonus, the more stewardship you have, the more holdings you can hold on your own. Going over this is not advisable, because you'll get less troops, you'll get less taxes, and thus it's not really helpful. You need to have some vassals. But there are limits to how many vassals you can have depending on your own title, etc. So you'll be forced to have some bigger vassals. In earlier versions there were people running around with basically an empire run by 1,000 single counts. So you could get a lot of interesting results with that. Money is of course very important. You can basically beat back anyone provided you have enough cash, so I would advise people to just make sure that you have at the very least around 300-400 ducats in the bank, just so you can be safe if the unthinkable happens. Intrigue, basically, well, uncovering plots and killing people, protecting yourself too to some degree. And state learning is basically how well you are at converting provinces, for instance, for the chaplain, and it also apparently helps technology, so that's very, very useful. Now here you can see the limits of, well, what you can have yourself. Demnes, 3 out of 6. This was out of date because I haven't actually run time yet. It'll probably update soon enough. Vassal limit 5 out of 20. As you can see, this is my, this is the king's Demnes, as you can see here. It's basically due to the fact that he has a king title, whereas we only have a duke title. So that is why it's getting more. Our vassal limit is 13. There we have our troops, our current money, our current prestige, and our current piety. Having, well, high piety means that church or clergy will like you more, and opinion boost, if you will. Same goes for prestige when it comes to noblemen, so both of them are kind of important. But other than that, there's not really too much to do. Traits are of course really, really important, and you generally want green ones, because basically people will like them a lot more. Arbitrary is basically just negative no matter how you look at it, as you can see here. It doesn't really care for rules or anything, it just does whatever he wants. And stewardship -2, learning -1, opinion -10. So people do not like that. Gregarious on the other hand is a very positive trait. Only positive things with that. +5 to vassal opinion, +2 to diplomacy. Basically this is what you want if you want to keep a stable realm. Chaste, not really too helpful, to be perfectly honest. Of course it helped with church, but you kind of want a lot of children, basically because of the fact that you're playing a house. You're not playing a king, you're not playing a country, you're playing a house. And in this case, the house that I chose only has 2 living members. The current person that I'm playing as, and the son, who's currently just a newborn child. Now, if you run out of dynasty members with titles, you will die, or sorry, the game will end. So you kind of have to be wary of that. Getting married is actually really, really simple. You just press this, and you do to some degree want to get someone who has a, to some degree, positive trait with them. Unfortunately, you do have very limited options in the beginning, but as you grow, you get better options. Now, you want to remember that state, again, state diplomacy, etc., is boosted by your wife's stats. So if you're missing a particular stat, you can go for that. If you want someone all around, you can go for that. I'll just go ahead and marry her to show you how it actually works. Unfortunately, I'll take a prestige hit, as you saw, because I'm not marrying anyone that's, well, too prestigious, but I can then get that back from the event that follows from the marriage. So now, as you can see, my state here, state diplomacy has been boosted, because you get half the stats of your wife rounded down. So that is really, really useful, of course. And it's kind of important to keep these high for just the stability of your realm. Now that's basically your own character and how to read the interface. But there's some other things like law, for instance. Elected gavel kind, it basically means that you have to nominate someone to take over, in this case, dukedom. Elected gavel kind here too. We can't actually nominate anyone because it seems like we don't have the choice to do so, unfortunately, in this case. Because, again, I think it has to be of the same family, if I'm not completely mistaken. But it doesn't know. These are ducal laws. These are the laws of our duchy, which is basically the Duchy of Brunswick, this area right here. That's the area that we are in charge of. And as you can see, the king here actually holds one of the provinces that we should have. We could, of course, bother him with that, if we wanted to. As you can see, hold great loot, found new kingdom, raise tribal army. We don't really want to do that. But it's, as you can see, it's a very easy way to get cheap troops. So, it's good for people of my, well, religion. We currently, as you can see, we're Saxon in terms of culture, and religion-wise, I'm a little bit, yeah, we're Germanic pagan. So here you see the benefits and negatives of being a certain culture. For instance, we can do coastal raids, which is a very good way of getting money. We can use fleets on the rivers. That's also very good. And we can declare segregation wars against all other pagans, basically take them in under our empire. Now, the problem with being pagan is that the emperors are very much stuck to one person. If you do a lot of conquest, you're going to get punished once the succession comes. So, it's kind of interesting here, but also as you can see here, we lose prestige if we have peace too long, and the Germanic pagan fate can be reformed. Now, if we go to religion here, in order to reform the fate, we need to have at least 50 moral authority, which can be gained by holding the holy sites and also winning wars. And we need 750 piety, which can also be won by taking county provinces from people who aren't, well, our faith. And we can also do that by sacking temples, for instance. So it's not too hard to get up. Saving up to 750 piety, though, can be a harder task. But as you can see, we need Tolden, Uppsala, Leidora, and Mara if we want to reform our fate. Now, that's not the important part. Military attack is the attack advantage is basically what they are here. You can just hover over and you'll get to know what they do. It's basically just increasing tax, it's building speed, it's legalism is definitely the one you want here, because it basically allows you to go for higher levels of centralization. And the more centralized your state is, the more land you can hold yourself, but less vassals you can have, etc. Military, these are your current personal levies, the army from your own deniers, and this is basically your vassal armies, the army or troops that your vassals are obligated to give you in term of war. As you can see, we have 3 counts and a court chaplain here, or a temple holder as vassals, and these are the troops they can give us. So as you can see, it varies very greatly, and it's actually it's pretty much tied to their opinion. So it's quite interesting. Retinues, as your country grows, you can get retinues, and they're basically stationary armies that are, well, they are pretty damn powerful sometimes, but they're expensive. They're stationary armies and do not get disbanded every time you start a war. and you can start a war having them already raised, so that is pretty damn wonderful. With the Levites, you can't actually raise them until a war has been declared. Or if you raise them before a war, you can't actually declare a war while having them raised. Intrigue tab is actually really simple. It's basically here you'll find decisions and of course plots. You can revoke the chiefdoms, as you can see. We can do that, just take some chiefdoms back and live happily ever after. But as you can see, also I forgot to mention, the stats of my wife actually gave me a stewardship bonus, as you can see, so I get an extra domestic slot. And 2 more to my vassal slot here, because we get bonus from diplomacy. So again, if you want to have a high realm, big realm, you should go for diplomacy and stewardship in your ruler. And factions is basically here where people will get pissed at you. For instance, we can start an independence faction right now. Basically, we want to break free of a liege, so that could work. But you can also use this as a way to try and force your demands, basically. If I want a county, he might actually be inclined to give it to me now, because I have, as you can see, 83.1% of his manpower. And I also don't like him much, so he could hand over some provinces now to help me. Now the council is kind of an interesting one. Basically all of these do different things, but they're basically backups, if you will. They are supposed to help you rule the realm, and as you can see, they do. It basically tells you how much of a chance there is for something to go. For instance, settled tribe means that you're trying to change the culture in a county to your own. And, well, it's a 6.4 chance yearly, so it'll take about 15 years to do so. Build legend, as you can see, you get some prestige. You get warriors raised. Basically, you get some extra troops, I would presume. I can organize a raid, as you can see here. And, well, they will get angry with you and take your gold for instead. So basically it's a way to get free troops for raiding. And the funny thing here is, you can actually run in the border regions here and raid all you want. As long as you, A, have a boat either in coast, you can raid all the coastal provinces, or B, have a land border, you can just raid and it'll go straight to your coffers. By raiding you'll get money and prestige. It's actually a really good thing to do for pagans. It's really, really wonderful. And we can build seal, piety, really good. And again here, if you raise the zealots, if you do not use them for religious war, they will get pissed and go after you and you'll lose your piety. Convert the province, for instance, religious relation between you and, well, Goody, the spiritual leader. So basically all of these are more or less self-explanatory and should be really easy to go with some testing here. But basically there's a couple of rules you want to follow when creating a realm. For starters, you kind of want to stay away from traits that give negative opinion from your vassal to yourself. For instance, ambitious is a really bad trait to have in a vassal because it gives a -52 opinion modifiers, as well as +2 across the entire board of skills here. So I don't really want that in a vassal. That is kind of dangerous, kind of scary. What you could do, however, is go for giving people like the heir here a lot of land, then you'll inherit it, and then you can do whatever you want with it afterwards. Sorry. Then when you die, he'll inherit it, and you can then hand your land out to the next heir, for instance, etc. There's a lot of options here. But yeah, that's basically it. And again, when it comes to handing out land, you kind of have to be very, very careful. You need to go for people that are of your religion, of your culture, that will give you bonuses to opinion. And a really easy way to do that if you don't have any court is just go to find characters, choose men or women, both even, depending on your laws. For instance, the laws that we have here, we don't have gender laws, so I'm pretty sure I can hand it over to anyone, but doesn't really matter. You can just choose both the gender anything. You'll go with my religion, my culture, ruler, no, married, any, that works too. And again, I could actually go for no to get children that I could potentially hand land over to. In this case, I don't really have too many of them in my court, and as you can see, you can't invite them, unfortunately. Adults must be invited, but over time, as your country gets bigger, it's really easy to find children or whatever to just hand titles over to. And the reason why I want you to hand titles over to the children is really, really simple. A child can't join a faction against you before they come of age, so that basically means that if you're lucky, you'll have 10-15 years where that person can't join a faction. Basically, you could also go with, well, they do get a bonus for getting the county, so it's not really necessary, is it? But let's face it, if it's just a 40 modifier. A 40 modifier can easily be overridden by, for example, them getting ambitious. So there's a lot of different modifiers you kind of have to look out for. Now, ambition-wise, there's a lot of you hate to choose. For instance, if you are a vassal, you can go for becoming one of the chancellors on the council. And might as well save up cash, paragon of virtue, basically get a ton of piety. As you can see here, you'll get some bonuses, be known as the Holy. The Germanic Fate will get some authority for the 20 years. Have a daughter, basically get a daughter, or become the King of Saxony. If I go for this ambition, for instance, I can now use subjugation wars against everyone within the Kingdom of Saxony. But I already am basically completed the Kingdom of Saxony, so what I would actually have to do here is declare war for, well, independence, and then probably the Kingdom of Saxony itself, which is a little bit of a pain in the arse. Now, focus is a new thing that's come that's actually really, really useful, because it gives you a bonus to whatever you feel like. If you're a warrior, you could go for war. If you're a, well, family man, you can go for family, get +2 to diplomacy, fertility, and health. This is actually really powerful focus, because it means you can have a lot of kids, you get a diplomacy boost, which is wonderful, can have more, well, have a more stable realm, and of course, health +1 means you live longer, and again, that helps a lot in terms of creating a more stable realm. Now, warfare in this game is basically very straightforward. As long as you have more troops, you will usually win, but it's also very important to look at the composition of troops. Let's just take these guys, for instance. As you can see, there's 350 light infantry, the weakest type of infantry. We have some archers and heavy infantry. Now, again, this is not really a very strong army, it's just light infantry. There's some archers and some heavy. If people have horses, armed horses, horse archers, etc., then these armies are going to get crushed, no matter if they outnumber them 2 to 1, just because of the fact the units are just so much better. So you need to keep that in mind when watching your enemies. Other than that, there's not really much to say. If you do not have a casus belli through either, as you can see here, I have it just because this is a pagan declaring war on a Catholic, that works. If you do not have a casus belli, you can use a chancellor to fabricate one. You can get one through inviting a someone with a claim, a strong claim, to your court, press his claim, for instance. But if you're going to press someone else's claims, it's advisable to actually go ahead and land him first. Give him a county, just to make sure that he doesn't actually slip out of your realm by handing him a title, for instance. If you press a claim for a title, also make sure that it's not the same title that you have. It needs to be one tier lower. Basically, if you're pressing a claim for a duke, or for a dukedom, you need to be a king if you're doing it for someone else. Because if you do not do that, then two dukes can't be under each other. So basically, he'll be independent and he'll take your county with him. So it's important to note that as well. And that's basically the only thing here. Now, as you can see here, due to the fact that I joined a faction, I can now demand independence. And we'll do that just to see what happens here. And as you can see here, he did not want to give me my independence, so I have left. We are now the Saxon Revolt, and as you can see here, in terms of troop numbers, we can raise 811, which is not a really strong army at all, especially considering that he have already raised an army that is bigger than us. But we do get some free troops, which is wonderful. And basically, in war situations like this, you definitely want to go ahead and try and destroy the smaller armies first, and the reason for that is very, very simple. The smaller armies can be easily destroyed with basically no losses. If I allow them to do what's happened here, join up into a, well, 3,000 man army, then I've basically already lost. I don't want to do that. It's just too bothersome, it's just too risky to allow the armies to join up. You should basically try and hit first, and that's why the retinues are really good to have. Now, this has been a very basic introduction. I've probably forgotten a lot of things, but I think I've gotten the importance here when it comes to the, well, more important tips and tricks and advices. You really need to be able to ascertain your own opponent's strength, because as you can see here, his army levels are 1.9 here, so he'll definitely crush me. As you can see, event spawn 382. Now, in my case, I have 1005, but as you can see, he has more troops than that, and that's basically because his vassals raise their troops as well to help out. They are forced to give or to raise a certain amount on his orders, but they can also raise their own to help. I could show you that if my king were to declare another war, but I really doubt it. But as you can see, if you just hover over, you can see where the troops are coming from. So hopefully this was a good introduction, I guess, to how the World of Crusader Kings works. It's just so infinitely more, and I haven't really bothered too much with the royal marriages, but basically by plotting, basically if you marry yourself a princess, or yeah, princess for instance, third or fourth in line for the crown. Sorry, not crown. What the hell am I saying? Third or fourth in line for the throne. Then you can basically, at least in early games, I haven't actually tested that out yet, you could assassinate and plot against the ones that are currently in line for the throne and on the throne, to basically get her on the throne, get a kid with her. Your kid would now be the next in line for said both that throne and also the your own country lands, etc. And thus you could actually get a lot more land by doing that. But of course this is kind of a, I would argue that is a bad way of doing things, for one very, very simple reason. Unless you actually start as a very small state and cherry pick your counts, dukes, etc. Make sure they are either family tied to you or part of, again, your religion and culture, things are going to get really nasty really fast, especially if, for instance, West France, Lombard, Bavaria, for instance, if I inherited all of these, it would be how to basically stabilize the realm. In most cases anyway, so of course things can get interesting that way, but I do hope that you had a little bit of a learning experience, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.